Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. Massive show today. I'm starting with why is one form of racism, i.e. anti-Semitism, deemed better than another. I'm going to get stuck right into that. And, of course, we've got the latest from Ukraine and why are so many teachers quitting?
Yes, we've got lots of interesting discussions coming up for you today. And make sure you get in touch with your views. We love to hear them. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email. We'll get to those throughout the show. But first, let's give you the headlines.
A very good morning to you. It's just 1 minute past 10. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. Now, the UK has warned all options will be on the table when it comes to the West's response if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. The government says it's working urgently to verify claims that chemical weapons were used in an attack on the besieged city of Mariupol. The Foreign Secretary described any such action as callous escalation in the conflict. The Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, told GB News he's worried about a renewed assault in the east.
I'm concerned in that I think that the fighting that is going to happen this spring and this summer in the Donbass is going to be extremely violent and will be quite a big army on quite a big army. They clearly have the May the 9th victory parade in mind as a date by which they need to have achieved something.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the chemical weapons threat is very real.
Один з рупорів окупантів заявив про те, що вони
One of the spokespeople of the invaders said they are considering using chemical weapons against the defenders of Mariupol. We take it very seriously. I want to remind world leaders that a possible use of chemical weapons had already been discussed by the Russian military. At the time, it meant the reaction to the Russian aggression should have been harsher and faster.
на російську агресію значно жорсткіше і швидше.
Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has apologised for defending convicted sex offender Imran Ahmad Khan. The Wakefield MP, who appeared in court yesterday, was found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008. Blunt also publicly retracted a statement after saying that Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice. Khan has since been expelled from the Conservative Party. The number of UK workers on payrolls rose by 35,000 between February and March to almost 30 million. But figures from the Office for National Statistics also show UK workers have suffered the biggest fall in pay for almost 9 years. The Chancellor said the government is helping to cushion the impacts of global price rises with over £22 billion of support for the cost of living increase. More than 60 climate activists have used superglue, chains and bike locks to block the entrance to Lloyd's in central London. The protest is part of a whole week of action by Extinction Rebellion, who are demanding the government end the fossil fuel economy. 38 protesters were arrested after they blocked 2 bridges at the weekend, causing major traffic problems. Former pilot Todd Smith told GBNews renewables are a cheaper and better form of energy.
We need to take action right now to secure a livable future. That's what the UN General Secretary is saying. It's not us. We're just here. You know, I glued myself on that Vauxhall roundabout yesterday. And of course, I don't want to get arrested. You know, I had a high-flying career, but, you know, we just need to do all that we can. And we need the people out in the streets. You know, we can't be bystanders anymore.
A study suggests people are now more worried about their finances than they are about catching coronavirus. Nearly half of those asked by researchers at University College London say they don't feel in control of their money because of the rising cost of living, while only a third are concerned about getting COVID. A £2.6 billion government programme to improve flood defences is being expanded. The Department for Environment says 314,000 homes are now better protected following the original investment. The national flood risk is said to have been reduced by 5% over the last 6 years. The government says another £5.2 billion has been allocated for the next 6 years. We're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News. It's just gone 5 past 10, and I'm Mercy Muroki. I'm Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We've got a great show lined up for you today. Lots of interesting discussions, I think, we're set to have. So here's what's coming up.
Well, Islamic State fanatic Al-Harbi Ali has been found guilty of murdering Conservative MP Sir David Amess in October last year and preparing acts of terrorism. We'll be asking how big a threat does Islamist extremism still pose to the UK, and are we doing enough to tackle it?
We will, and alarming reports of refugee exploitation have emerged since the war in Ukraine began. Women fleeing war are allegedly being targeted by messages of a sexual nature from men offering accommodation here in the UK. Under the government's Homes for Ukraine scheme, that's all supposedly happening. So we'll bring you more on that later on.
Yeah, now, the National Education Union says half of England's teachers plan to quit their jobs within the next 5 years, with 1 in 5 planning to do so actually within the next year. We're going to be discussing why that is.
Yes, that's all coming up and much more across the programme. And the email is gbviews@gbnews.uk for getting in all your thoughts on everything we're talking about this morning. But first, Patrick's going to give his views on anti-Semitism on UK campuses and discrimination in the UK.
I'm not sure what the rules are in this country anymore. As I understand it, you're not allowed to state biological facts regarding a cervix. You can be in a grooming gang for years and avoid prosecution. You can be a terrorist but be allowed to walk the streets and preach hate. And you have to take the knee even if you've never been racist in your life. I suppose then that it shouldn't come as absolutely no shock whatsoever that someone, a lady in fact, has been accused of anti-Semitism and attacking the Jewish community, but is now allowed to become the next president of the National Union of Students. Shaima Dalali is a very interesting character. There's a video from 2018 at King's College London. A group of protesters, of which Dalali is one, can be heard shouting "shame" at Jews as they leave the event, attended by a former Israeli Prime Minister. Here's the clip. Yeah, so there we go. What you can hear there is a group of, what you can see actually, a group of Jewish students having to walk a gauntlet of hate, actually, right in the heart of London. It's stomach-churning. It's out-and-out racism, isn't it, in my view, anyway. If that was the EDL doing something similar outside a mosque, they'd be arrested, they'd be publicly vilified and absolutely hounded by the press, and rightly so. But, according to reports, Dalali has form for this kind of stuff. So back in 2012, she tweeted about Muslims massacring Jews. She also referred to Muslim cleric Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi as the moral compass for the Muslim community at large. Well, that's interesting. because he's referred to throwing gay people off buildings or indeed setting them on fire, and said that the Holocaust was Allah's way of punishing Jews for their corruption. Delali was asked about whether or not she stood by these views. She declined to provide a comment. Interesting, isn't it? I wonder what that implies. She's reportedly raised money for Cage, a campaign group that described notorious ISIS beheading merchant Jihadi John as kind and gentle. So how can it be that someone like J.K. Rowling says women are women and that's enough to have her ostracised from public life, a similar fate to that of Father Ted creator Graham Linehan? But that this young lady is allowed to become president of the NUS. It doesn't make sense. I can't help but feel that anti-Semitism is just accepted. It's not seen as being as bad as Islamophobia or homophobia or transphobia. But why not? Could it be that the police are more afraid of upsetting the Muslim community than the Jewish community? Could it be that because Jews tend to be lighter skinned than other ethnic minorities, that there's a perception that racism doesn't affect them in the same way? Could it be that because of the lazy tropes of Jews all being rich and powerful, that there's a sense that they deserve to be brought down a peg or two? All of those things are wrong, categorically so. Now, I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I'm a big fan of free speech. But like I said, I just don't know what the rules are anymore. People are getting sacked for microaggressions and unconscious bias. But we have a lady here who's commented on the massacre of the Jewish people, intimidated them on film and not condemned the views of a radical, hateful, homophobic cleric. And that's OK. She can rise to a position of power. For her part, Delali said, the preemptive scrutiny, get this, of Muslim women is symptomatic of the nature of gendered Islamophobia. It's not. It's common sense. I just don't know what the rules are anymore.
Yeah, I think that's one of my favourite monologues you've done. I think it hits at... you don't get many compliments from me. No. I think it hints at some really key issues. Firstly, is that there is that trope, because Jews are lighter skinned, because they're seen as all-powerful by some sections of society. I think that is why they're not inclined to take racism. People aren't inclined to take racism towards Jews as seriously as racism towards other minorities. I think you also hit at a great point when you say that, you know, what are the rules anymore? Why are there these different rules for different minorities? And I genuinely think there is an attitude amongst a lot of people in society that the threshold for doing wrong is so much lower if you're an ethnic minority. And it's often, I feel, because a lot of well-meaning liberal elites, they don't want to offend you. You know, they want to give you more leeway than they might afford somebody who is a white male, for example. And I find that attitude quite patronising. And, you know, finally, I think her using this idea that the critique against her is because of misogyny and because she's a Muslim woman, I think that's a massive cop-out. I think most ordinary people can see right through her. And I mean, I'd be shocked if this was to actually happen and she becomes president. But then again, the NUS is notoriously a massive left-wing organisation, radical left organisation.
The concern is there will have been a voting process. And she's won that vote, which implies that clearly quite a lot of people feel the same way as her or are accepting of these views. Yeah,
I was actually, when I was in college, I was sort of forced to go along to the NUS conference to represent my college. And it happened to be the day or a couple of days before Margaret Thatcher died. And I remember sitting there and the whole hall was clapping Margaret Thatcher. Well, they weren't clapping, they were doing the whatever they do when you're not allowed to clap, to be inclusive. But they clapped the death of Margaret Thatcher, just this hall. And I just thought, wow, I'm not sure I belong here.
No, I think I'd have just lost it, to be honest with you. Right, but look, get those views coming in, GBViews at GBNews.uk. Do you feel as though racism is treated differently in this country depending on where it's coming from and who it's directed at? But we are moving on. Now, yesterday, Ali Harbi Ali was found guilty of both murdering Southend West MP Sir David Amess and preparing acts of terrorism.
Yes, in shocking testimony, it was described how Mr. Ali stabbed Sir David multiple times in a, quote, vicious and frenzied attack. That was in October last year, of course, as the much-loved MP was meeting constituents at a church in Leigh-on-Sea. Well, the prosecutor said it was a murder carried out by a young man who, for many years, had been planning just such an attack and who was and is a committed, fanatical, radical Islamist terrorist.
Well, Sir David's murder has thrown open the question of exactly how how big a threat Islamist terrorism still is in the UK and how much of a threat there is to the public from these extremists. And so joining us in the studio right now to talk further about this is Wootton, a terror and extremism expert, associate fellow at the Henry Jackson Society of Security think tank. Thank you so much for joining us in the studio. We normally have to do it over Zoom or whatever, but well, look, let's answer those questions, I suppose, really. How big a threat in the UK is radical Islamist terrorism?
Well, it is actually a threat. It's probably the biggest threat. In fact, a recent report from the Henry Jackson Society found that there was an imbalance between far-right referrals to the PREVENT programme in comparison to what is actually happening in terms of Islamist terrorism. So what we're seeing is that there's more Islamist terrorism taking place in comparison to how many far-right referrals are being made. So that imbalance is exists, and as a result, we're not, well, it seems the government are not taking this seriously.
Yeah, I was reading about Ali, Harbi Ali, I did get it right, didn't I?
Yeah.
This morning, and he seemed to lead, before obviously he committed this heinous crime, he seemed to lead what you describe as a relatively normal life for a young person. He was at a British university, he was studying radiology, you know, he wasn't somebody who was obviously going to do something so horrific, and that really scares me, because how does somebody turn into someone who's just walking amongst us in society to somebody who can commit something so unthinkable?
Well, it's really strange because what he's actually gone and done is self-radicalise himself, and so he's been able to access material online from the likes of ISIS, and as a result of that, he's been able to feed into the ideology, or the Islamist ideology, which is essentially a totalitarian ideology, which places Muslims as victims in Western democracies, or Western democracies are importing themselves into Muslim lands. As a result of that, he feels that he needs to have to then do something, and it's very likely that he felt British democracy wasn't working for him, so the only way he could do something about that was to actually take the law into his own hand and take someone's life.
Now, we hear all too often, in my opinion, I hear it regularly on here, well, look, you know, the fastest growing threat is far-right terrorism. And you just touched on something, I think, in your first point there about that. Just talk me through about that in a bit more detail, because is it the fastest growing threat, or is that a way of being able to maybe use quite cute language to hide or mask the real threat of Islamist terrorism?
Well, it certainly is the fastest growing threat, but that's not necessarily, just because it's the fastest growing threat, it doesn't mean it's the actual threat that we're faced with. We're actually faced with jihadist terrorism more acutely in comparison. You only have to look at Liverpool, where we had a refugee who was able to use disguised compliance, and he was able to pretend he was now a Christian in order to gain asylum here.
Absolutely.
And then, as a result, he wanted to then bomb innocent people. So that's another thing. We also have to look at those who are being referred to the actual PREVENT programme and then go through the whole de-radicalisation process. Take Imran Khan, for example. Again, an Islamist terrorist. He went through the whole process, and using disguised compliance, still went and killed the very people who were meant to help him. So whilst far-right terrorism is the fastest growing threat, Islamist terrorism is the actual threat that we're facing.
It is one of the biggest problems, I suppose, in all of this, the fact we can't talk about it openly, or at least our politicians and the people in charge are afraid to speak about this kind of thing openly, because people do have that genuine fear of being deemed Islamophobic if they raise issues surrounding terrorism, if they're seen to be pointing the finger at the Muslim community as a whole. That problem has to be overcome, surely, if we are to tackle this problem properly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we need to look at is, let's take the definition of Islamophobia, which essentially the APPG working definition, which is the all-party parliamentary group's definition. And what they've done is they've essentially conflated Islam and Muslims as one homogenous bloc, and that's actually not the case. And as a result of that, for example, the National Association of Muslim Police Officers, they're using this definition, or appear to be using this definition, to prevent us from even using the word Islamist when it was actually Islamists carrying out terrorist attacks. And so when you've got language that is preventing us from tackling the threat of terrorism, not being allowed to talk about, then there's seriously something wrong at both policy level and at government level if they're not doing anything about it.
Just very lastly, because I know we've got to go to a break shortly, but just to touch a little bit on what I've said before, I don't know if you heard my monologue earlier, but basically about one form of racism in this country, i.e. anti-Semitism, maybe being deemed to be, quotes unquote, better than Islamophobia, for example. And does some of that stem from the language that you were just talking about there? And also, does some of it stem from potentially the reaction from certain elements of the community as well? I'm keen to get your views on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we, when it comes to Islamophobia, there's a bigotry of low expectations when it comes to Muslims, and a lot of policy makers, particularly on the left, feel that they need to protect Muslims more than they need to protect Jews, which is horrendous, because both forms of anti-Muslim hatred and anti-Semitism must be treated equally. But because there's a perception that Jews are light-skinned or white and they are benefiting from some form of white privilege, then prevents them or puts them at less of a priority than any other form of racism.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, thank you very much. Really appreciate you coming into the studio as well. Great to have you actually here. Was Eat there, of course, a terror and extremism expert and associate fellow at Henry Jackson Society, which is a security thing, I think we all agree as well. A very knowledgeable chap as well. So anyway, coming up, very interesting. Yes. Go on, you do it.
Coming up, we'll be speaking with a modern slavery expert about reports of sexual exploitation and the exploitation of labour as well, as millions of Ukrainians flee the ongoing war. Well, is the Homes for Ukraine scheme putting refugees at risk? We'll bring you more on this after this.
Hello, a very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. For many of us, Easter weekend is looking drier and brighter. But some weather to talk about today, some wet weather moving up from the south around an area of low pressure which sits to the southwest of the UK. Ahead of this area of rain moving up from the south, there's also another band of rain clearing north across the far north of Scotland. That eventually peters away, and then for many it's a case of showers or outbreaks of more persistent rain moving north through the day, so that by the afternoon, much of central and eastern Scotland, northern and central as well as eastern England sees more persistent rain, whilst Northern Ireland, Wales and the southwest brighten up with some sunshine coming through. Feeling warm in that sunshine, but also the sunny spells helping to set off a few more heavy downpours. But it will feel cold, I think, for the east coast of Scotland, 8 Celsius with an onshore wind here, and perhaps the far northeast of England. The rain in the far northeast pushes through and eventually becomes confined to the northeast of the mainland of Scotland and the Northern Isles during the early hours of Wednesday. Otherwise, the showers elsewhere die away, but there'll be a lot of cloud remaining, so that it's a gloomy start to Wednesday. Another mild start to the day, but a lot of mist and low cloud, particularly around southern and western shores. This will take some time to lift through the morning, but eventually sunny spells break out inland, and a few scattered showers will also develop, some heavy downpours towards the south. The rain in the far northeast of Scotland eventually clears away, and brighter skies also for Scotland and Northern Ireland, but a few showers here. I think from the central belt towards the south of England, 17 or 18 Celsius, but in one or two spots, 20 or 21 degrees. And perhaps by Thursday, even warmer still, with a lot of fine weather in the east, 21 or 22 degrees.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very good morning. It's 10:24 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News Live on your TV, online and radio.
Yes, well, the United Nations says that 4.8 million of Ukraine's 7.5 million children have been displaced since the start of the war 6 weeks ago. That's around 2/3 of Ukraine's child population.
Yes, well, when ministers unveiled the Homes for Ukraine scheme last month, anti-trafficking charities did warn that refugees could be placed at risk of exploitation and abuse in unregulated environments. So where does that leave the millions of children and their mothers escaping the horrors of war?
Yeah, well, joining us now to help find the answers to these questions is Justine Carell, Director of Unseen, which is a charity providing safe houses and supporting the community for survivors of trafficking and modern slavery. Thank you very much. Now, obviously, we've got this, Homes for Ukrainian Refugees scheme and this, that and the other. So we are hearing that sometimes that's being exploited, where people are sending messages of a sexual nature. Frankly, I think we can see what their intentions there are. Are there adequate safeguards in place for you with this scheme, do you think?
Good morning. No, I don't think there are. I think we are jumping into a situation where we're placing vulnerable people in other people's houses. And the majority of those who have put forward their names and have wanted to be part of the scheme, I'm sure have good intentions, but we are concerned that given that we've got very vulnerable people who have been displaced, as you said, we've got young children being moved from one country to another, that actually this could pose a problem in terms of exploitation. And so we want to make sure that we get messaging and we get information out to those families who are coming to the UK to make sure that if they do get into a situation that they can get help and support and they know who to turn to. It's going to be quite a tricky situation. We're uplifting and uprooting people with no money, with no network and with no housing. And our concern is that this is a short-term fix. What do we do in 12 months? And the scheme is meant to run for a 12-month period. What happens beyond that? So we need to think not just about the short term, but we also need to think about the long term as well.
What safeguards are currently in place? Because obviously, on one hand, you have to commend the government for rolling out this scheme and not putting a cap on this scheme. There's lots of people who've come forward. They have to be commended as well. But what safeguards are in place? Do you have to have, for example, a CBS check like you would do if you were working with vulnerable adults or children? Do they check you whether you have a criminal record? What is the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is a DBS check that is undertaken for those families that are coming forward. But obviously a DBS check will only highlight if you've actually been convicted of a crime or if you've had a police caution. So again, that's not a fail-proof system. We've also got others who are coming from the Ukraine. We don't know whether we have any individuals there that have been convicted of previous offences as well. So we want to make sure, we absolutely believe that, yes, the government should step up and help and support. My concern is that if we have these families placed with other families in the UK, what safeguards do we have 3 months down the line? How can we help a failing social care system that can't deal with everything that we've seen throughout the last 2 years, the pandemic, the fact that we've got many UK nationals already struggling with the economy and the cost of living and inflation, and then we're introducing people who are traumatised, people who have and will have PTSD for many, many months and years because of what they've seen. How are we going to make sure these families can cope with that?
Well, this is it. You raise a really good point, actually. I was chatting about it in the office with someone a few days ago about the level of potential psychological trauma, especially amongst children, and the special needs and care that they may therefore have to have to undergo, and whether or not people are adequately prepared for that kind of thing. And that's another area, isn't it, I think, really, where children could be at risk in this particular country now if they come over here.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, it's very evident that people will be completely traumatised by having to uproot their families, by children being taken in the middle of the night, you know, with one bag, not really knowing where their next food is coming from or where they are going to be able to live in the future, and then being teleported into another country where you might not know the language or you might not know the rules of the country. Then it's actually quite a traumatic situation, and to expect the average family to be able to embrace that, to make sure that those young children who will likely have some kind of trauma that might not show right now but might be coming out over the next few weeks and months, how do we support them? How do we make sure that we give them the best chance of being able to recover from what we all know is an absolute tragedy?
Well, Justine, look, thank you so much for talking us through that really important issue. Justin Corral, the director of Unseen, which is a charity providing safe houses and support in the community for survivors of trafficking and modern slavery. I think I can't help but feel, I was just saying to you there, wasn't I, that we can't always let the perfect be the enemy of the good, if that's the right phrase. These things will never be perfect, and I'm obviously not excusing the fact people will take advantage of that. But I think the scheme in and of itself, the point of it is to be as quick as possible. You know, these people's lives are in danger. It has to be as quick as possible. And of course, all the safeguards do have to be put in place. But no safeguards, as we know with everything else, will ever 100% filter out all the bad eggs that there will be. So I don't think this should slow down the scheme at all. Absolutely. And if it does, I think then you have to reconsider, you know, whether that's appropriate. Yeah, no, exactly. It's a very tricky one, isn't it? And look, hopefully we manage to weed out anyone who is kind of malintentioned, as it were. Right, OK, well, let's get stuck into a couple of views. I think GB Views at gbnews.uk. Lots of people getting in touch about what I was discussing earlier, which is kind of about the way that we treat racism in this country, and maybe the fact that anti-Semitism is deemed to be less bad, as it were, than things like Islamophobia, etc. And people, saying that they kind of agree, really, and they feel like that actually the treatment of Jewish people in this particular country can at times be worse, and some people saying they think it's because sometimes of those tropes, aren't there, of Jews being powerful and rich and all this kind of stuff, and actually maybe they're seeing that makes it more fair game for people to be quote-unquote racist to them, whereas actually the reality is just that all racism's bad, isn't it? Lots of people are getting in touch, commending your monologue there. They say thanks for exposing the issue, and some of them are suggesting, some of our viewers and listeners are suggesting that this says more about the NUS, the National Union of Students, actually, as a whole, than perhaps this lady in particular who's running to be president. I think that's a really pertinent point, because you have to ask yourself what kind of an organisation could let this kind of individual get to the point where she's, you know, in any other common sense, normal environment, she'd be written off straight away, should be, you know, cancelled, I suppose, because of the views and because she's clearly not of she's got a great character, is she?
But I think this actually highlights a deep flaw with a lot of the left in this country. The kind of tolerant people, the Rainbow Flag Brigade, the kind of people who want to accept that, you know, women, a man can be a woman and this kind of stuff. Well, actually, hang on a second here. The left, I would imagine, will have voted for this particular individual, Shaima Dalali, and she has not condemned the throwing of gay people off buildings or indeed burning them, and obviously has not condemned the comments about essentially Allah being responsible for the Holocaust, which is obviously ludicrous stuff. And you think, well, hang on a minute, how does that match up with their tolerant view?
Well, we'll get to many more of your comments after this break.
It's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. The UK has warned all options will be on the table when it comes to the West's response if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. The government says it's working urgently to verify claims that chemical weapons were used in an attack on the besieged city of Mariupol. It's after the Foreign Secretary described any such action as callous escalation in the conflict. Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has apologised for defending the convicted sex offender Imran Ahmad Khan. Khan is the Wakefield MP who appeared in court yesterday, was found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008. He's now been expelled from the Tory party. Well, Blunt said Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice, but he retracted that statement this morning. More than 60 Extinction Rebellion activists have blocked the entrance to Lloyd's of London. The demonstrators are demanding the company stops insuring fossil fuel projects. Using superglue chains and bike locks, they say their aim is to close the business for a day by preventing staff from entering the building. The number of people on payrolls rose by 35,000 between February and March. But the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics also show workers suffered the biggest fall in real pay for almost 9 years. Experts are warning wages will lag even further, with inflation expected to soar by autumn. You're up to date. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. Don't go anywhere. Patrick and Mercy will be back in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 10:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News, live as ever on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, well, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer and Scottish leader Anna Sawar are in Glasgow visiting a charity that looks to invest in Scotland's young people. Our Scotland reporter, Davy Donaldson, has more on this. Davy, so just tell us more about what the aim of this is.
Yeah, Keir Starmer and Anna Sawar arrived here a short time ago at Postle Point in Glasgow, which is a community youth involvement centre. So they're inside at the moment. They're going to be meeting young people, just really to talk about, you know, how youth can be encouraged in terms into jobs and that kind of thing. But one of the real things that they've come out and said today as well is that Starmer and Sawar have both come out and said that Scotland risks paying the price in lost jobs and opportunities if SNP ministers don't act to support energy investment in Scotland. And this is all about nuclear. Of course, it came out from the UK government saying that there would be 8 new reactors across England and Wales, but none in Scotland. The Labour Party here claiming that the SNP are blocking any moves to have a new facility in Scotland. We have Torness, the only one left. That's in East Lothian. That's the only one left after Hunterston closed earlier this year. So, but what they're saying is that in North Ayrshire, Ardea could have a world-leading facility of energy and could create lots of jobs as well. So that's really something they're trying to get across on this trip. Whether that's going to fall on deaf ears, we don't know, but certainly that's something they're really promoting in terms of trying to get people into jobs. And not just that, of course, the energy problems that we're all finding ourselves in as well, in terms of rising bills and rising costs. So they're saying that this centre should be looked at in terms of promoting energy and producing energy, which will obviously help in the future. But yeah, they're inside at the moment. They're due out any minute. They're then going down there to speak to the media. So we'll speak to them then, find out more about that and what else they've got to say on a number of subjects when we go down there later on this morning.
David, thank you very much. David Donaldson there, of course, reporting as Keir Starmer makes his way there with Anna Sawar.
That sounds like the dullest conference ever.
Well, it looks like a young offenders unit.
Doesn't it?
I think.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be an education centre in Scotland.
That's
It's like a
what
prison.
they look like in Scotland.
What?
Sorry, Scottish viewers.
Not like the people would be trapped in there. Anyway, to be fair. Gosh, well, there we go. Well, a survey from the National Education Union has suggested that nearly half of England's teachers plan to quit their jobs within the next 5 years, and a fifth of those plan to do so within the next year.
Yes, well, for those planning to leave, most said that the unimaginable or unmanageable workload was the main reason for their job dissatisfaction, as well as concerns over a lack of trust from the public and what they consider to be low pay and low levels of teaching assistance.
Well, here to give his thoughts is teacher and author of a book, I'm a Teacher, Get Me Out of Here, Dr. Francis Gilbert. I love the title of that book. Fantastic stuff. Well, what's going on then, really? Is it fair to say that teachers are overworked and underpaid?
I think it is. I do think for what they do and the amount of work that they do, they are not paid sufficiently. And, obviously the equivalent in the legal profession or the financial sector person is paid much, much better than teachers. And that's, so teachers are voting with their feet, particularly if the economy is picking up. They're going on to better paid jobs with better conditions of service. Because the conditions of service for teachers is, post the pandemic, it is very tough at the moment. They're having to pick up a lot of problems that have been brought on by the pandemic of children, basically not being educated properly and having to help them catch up. And then they're also, I think, suffering from the fact that there's been an increase in surveillance of teachers because of all the kind of digital mechanisms that were put in place have sort of carried on post-pandemic. And I think teachers feel a bit kind of overwatched, nannied too much and not trusted enough to get on with their job.
Yeah, OK, all right, I do understand that. I suppose... Look, maybe one of the issues is that we do seem to be slipping further and further down the league tables. I'm just going to play devil's advocate here. Is the actual quality of our teachers worse than in other countries?
I think, again,
Can I just ask this though? The government have obviously said they will be giving teachers a pay increase. 4% pay rise, says here, would cost £1.4 billion. Look, for me, I feel like that £1.4 billion, when we're talking about education, particularly when children have fallen so far behind, that could probably do much more good than somebody getting 4% more in their pay packet every month. So couldn't the money be better spent, more effectively spent, rather than giving teachers pay rise, to make teaching maybe an easier job by investing in pupils better and investing in facilities?
That is true, but of course, I mean, the government have a close eye on this, and they are very concerned about teacher supply, which is a real issue at the moment. There's a lot of shortage subjects, particularly at secondary level, and as I was saying, there is a lack of men in the profession. So obviously, the government's kind of number crunchers do figure out that they're going to improve teacher supply by in having things like this. And I take your point, though, because it's a good one. I think the conditions of service are not good. In this country, teachers teach actually far too many lessons, have far too little time to prepare and really reflect on their work. Whereas in other countries, such as in the Far East or in Finland, which do attain much more highly, there is a better culture of getting teachers to take proper time to share and collaborate and prepare lessons that are going to be really effective.
Thank you very, very much, Francis. Dr. Francis Gilbert there, of course, author of I'm a Teacher, Get Me Out of Here. Great to have your views. Thank you very much. Very on brand, I thought, with the whiteboard.
Yeah, he had, I think, a list of points. In very teacher mode.
Yeah.
I never liked a whiteboard in a school.
No?
No.
Well, no, I think look, I don't know, my ex was just like a normal science teacher, not a head of a department or something. It was on like 45 grand. I don't think that's
really
not a bad wage.
Even some professors in Oxford don't get paid that much. Anyway,
there you go.
Look, 22 former presidents of the National Union of Students have written a letter expressing, quote, serious concerns about anti-Semitism and the safety and treatment of Jewish students.
Well, this comes after the chair of the Education Select Committee, Robert Halfon MP, called for the Charity Commission to look into the student body, saying, quote, the NUS has allowed a culture of discrimination and harassment against Jewish students to brew, to the point where they suggested Jewish students segregate themselves from an event. The very opposite of inclusion. Yeah, shocking that. We'll get stuck into that, actually. The NUS have said in response that they take anti-Semitism allegations seriously. There's no place for anti-Semitism within the student movement.
Yes, well, joining us now to give us more on this is Sabrina Miller, who's a freelance journalist who, as a student, took on anti-Semitism on campus. We appreciate your time this morning. Is there an endemic problem, a chronic issue with the NUS when it comes to anti-Semitism, in your opinion?
100%. This is the second time in 10 years that the NUS has elected a president with a history of making anti-Semitic comments. I spoke to a couple of friends who were at the 2022 conference, and they told me that they felt scared to show their Star of Davids in public, that they felt unsafe at conference. And this is crazy to me because NUS places a huge amount of emphasis on liberation, and yet when it comes to Jewish people, there is a huge double standard and the needs of Jewish students are completely ignored.
But this indicates, doesn't it, I mean, you will know more about the exact election process at the NUS than I will, no doubt, but does this not indicate a worrying undercurrent of anti-Semitism amongst the youth, frankly? Because they will have had to vote for it, won't they? They will have had to vote for someone who's basically had a history of making rather fruity comments about Jews, you know?
I think that this isn't really the case because the NUS is frankly not at all representative of students. The turnout for NUS delegate elections is abysmal. Now, within the NUS movement, those are the people that vote for the president. And that group is mainly made up of people with really fringe views. But general students don't engage with the NUS because they know that it's a completely insane organisation. And it is not at all representative of students at the national level. And I think Rob Halfon has been really brilliant in calling this out. Because NUS is not at all representative. It's frankly an unfit organisation to represent the needs of most students.
I mean, I don't mean to be crude about this, although this is very crass, but isn't the case that, look, a lot of Islam, this lady is of Islamic origin, obviously. We know there's a long-standing rift between people of the Muslim faith, lots of people of the Muslim faith and Jews. And we know the left, many members of the radical left have a problem with Jews. Could it be that because it's this cohort of people, that's why these sentiments are revealing themselves more than they would in the general population?
I wouldn't say it's because of that reason. I would say that it's because the NUS is made up of people on the far left of society, of all types of people on the far left of society. The current president, Larissa Kennedy, has also had a huge issue with tackling the needs of Jewish students. So, for instance, she was the one that told Jews to go into a separate space when Loki was performing. I don't think this is about that. I think this is because NUS is largely made up of people with really, really far left views that aren't willing to accept the institutional anti-Semitism that exists within the NUS.
Clearly, in my opinion anyway, bear in mind we have actually invited them on, and it's not the first time we've invited them on actually. They're not willing to have a conversation with us, so there's that. In my opinion, I don't think, and this is possibly the problem, I don't think they see it as racism. I'm not sure they see it for what it really is. And that's actually a really concerning trait because, I don't know about you, Sabrina, I certainly would expect that if I sat on this platform today and expressed, certainly didn't condemn, shall we say, the views of a radical cleric who thinks gay people should burn to death and that the Holocaust was some kind of Allah's punishment for the corruption of Jews, right? I imagine I'd lose my job, OK? But however, you can become the head of the NUS, can't you? I mean, it's strange. They clearly don't see it, do they?
I completely agree. I think on the far left, when anti-Semitism manifests, because these people sort of see themselves as quite progressive in their views and their outlook, they fail to see that actually they've gone sort of so far off the other end that they're now spouting racist conspiracy theories. And I think they actually need to recognise what they've been saying and recognise how problematic it is before we can make any change, which is why I ultimately think that NUS cannot be fixed. I think it's rotten to the core. And I think that if any meaningful change is going to happen and any meaningful representation of students is going to happen, this needs to happen with a completely new and different organisation because NUS is broken.
Here, I agree very much with that. Let's scrap the whole thing, start from fresh. Look, Sabrina, thank you very much for coming on to speak to us, a freelance journalist there who did take on the issue of anti-Semitism on her campus.
Good stuff. Well, look, there's concerns, now just moving on, there's concerns that the rising cost of living could force almost half of public swimming pools to close within the next 12 months. So gas and electricity prices are expected to double by the end of the year, which could add a further £100,000 to bills. I mean, it's unsustainable, isn't it?
Yes, well, Community Leisure UK are calling for the government to invest £1 billion to protect pools, which I'm sure £1 billion is most industries would crave
well,
right
of course,
now.
Yeah.
But, our East Midlands reporter Will Hollis is in Sutton in Ashfield for us now to tell us more about this. Will, good morning. This is a problem everybody's facing, everybody from anybody who just happens to live in a house to the biggest companies. We can't give money to everybody for the bills, can we?
Good morning. Yes, of course, we've been hearing so much recently about the cost of the average person's energy in their household, £700 extra a year since the price cap went up in the 1st of April. But we don't often consider these really big businesses that rely on having lots of energy. One of those places is, of course, leisure centres, particularly swimming pools, because if you've ever walked into a place where there's a pool, you're greeted straight away by that intense heat. And here in the Lammas Leisure Centre in Sutton in Ashfield in North Nottinghamshire, it's exactly the same situation. They've also got an ice rink in there that they have to keep cold, so that's a lot of energy as well. We've been hearing about some of the different figures. One of them is that UK Active estimates that by the end of this year, 2022, most places that have a swimming pool, most leisure centres, will be paying 150% more than they were in 2019, the last operational year. So this morning I've been poolside speaking to Lorenzo, who's the contract manager who manages this particular leisure centre and a couple of others for Ashfield District Council.
I suppose we all thought the pandemic was going to be a big problem for us, but now we're coming into a new crisis, which is the rise in energy costs, where we're looking at a centre like this, which is having energy costs rising by £60,000 minimum per year.
And how are you managing it? How are you able to stay open at the moment in a leisure centre that seems to be fairly new?
Yeah, this centre's 13 years old, so we've got technologies in place. We've also invested recently as an organisation with a local authority, with Ashfield District Council. We're investing £22.5 million in new technologies, new sensors, and we're bringing solar PVC in, as well as new boilers, new run-around coils, things like that, and we're using the energy reclaim from the ice to actually help heat the swimming pools in the area as well.
And then just describe for me some of the other problems that you're facing, particularly around the war in the Ukraine and how you're actually able to keep these places clean.
Yeah, I mean, basically, again, due to the war that's going on currently in the Ukraine, we've got energy costs and we've got chemical costs that are increasing as well, because we're struggling to get hold of our sodium hypochlorite and calcium hypochlorite, which are two chemicals which you use to make chlorine within the swimming pools. So we're having to source them from elsewhere because they came from Russia and everything else like that. And obviously now we're not trading with Russia, so the companies that get those chemicals for us have got increased costs, and we're having to pay those costs again, which is all hitting the bottom line.
Yes, there's calls for £1 billion in funding. That's what Swim England say that they'd like to see to prevent a decade of decline, 2,000 swimming pools closing before the end of the decade. I spoke to the Department for Business. They said that they are running the 5p takeaway, the 5p minus on fuel duty, as well as around 400 million in loans for businesses. So that's the party line. But as you said, Patrick, as you said, Mercy, lots of industries want a lot of money and there's just not enough to go around, the Department of Business would probably say.
Will, thank you very much. Great stuff. That Will Hollis there reporting about the plight of the swimming pools, I suppose, really.
I did like that caption there, pulling the plug.
Yeah, see what we did there. But yes. Yeah, I mean, I can remember when I was younger, used to go to the old public bath and I just come home with a verruca,
Yeah, it's not for me.
It's just, I mean, look, by the way, yes, don't close the pools. But, I hope some of them are a bit grim, but anyway. Right, well, we're going to go into the inbox now, gbviews at gbnews.uk. Quite strong views about the teaching community, it's fair to say. Not all of them that favourable. Someone's made a point that whenever they feel that they see a teacher on things like The Chase or Pointless, that doesn't necessarily show the quality of teachers in the best light. But Ian's been in touch. I personally think the entire education system is outdated. We should implement aptitude testing each year for our students. Basically talking about reforming the way that we examine our kids, basically. I mean, I suppose that would be nice, considering last year we didn't examine them, which was amazing, wasn't it? It's because all the teachers then hit their targets and presumably got some bonuses, and a load of kids who shouldn't have done went to Oxford.
Is all this because your ex was a teacher?
Yeah.
This bitterness.
Yeah, it is really, yeah. But anyway, there we go. Yeah, one of my exes is a GP. It's not, no, I'm joking, no, it's not true. Right, keep all your thoughts coming into us on email, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after this break.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's been a wet start to Tuesday for many of us. That rain now moving north, warming up in the south behind the rain with some sunshine, but also a scattering of heavy showers. Low pressure keeping things unsettled at the moment. That low pressure sitting to the southwest of the UK. It is, however, drawing up some warmth from the south, along with these bands of rain. One band of rain clearing from the Northern Isles, although sticking around for much of the day for Shetland, and the next turning up into central, eastern and southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and northern England, and also a few more outbreaks of rain stretching back into central England. Otherwise, skies brightening and temperatures rising. Could see 20 or 21 Celsius, somewhere like East Anglia this afternoon. However, for eastern and southern Scotland, northern England, feeling cold with that rain and a strong wind from the North Sea. Heavy showers breaking out as the day comes to an end across much of England and Wales, and then further showers continuing into western parts through the night, whilst the persistent rain carries on in the far northeast of Scotland, along with the brisk wind. But for most, it's a frost-free night, a good deal of cloud cover, low cloud at that, so a gloomy start to Wednesday. A lot of mist and sea fog around some of these western, southern and northeastern shores. The rain in the far northeast of Scotland tends to ease through the day. It continues, I think, for Orkney and Shetland for much of Wednesday. Otherwise, brighter skies follow, but further heavy showers, perhaps even a few thunderstorms across parts of southern England and East Wales. But it will feel warm where we get some sunshine, 20 or 21 Celsius. And for Scotland, less cold compared to today, but still temperatures are not far from average for the time of year in Scotland, whilst it's sunnier and warmer elsewhere. And then into the outlook, well, the weather turns warmer still heading into the Easter weekend. For many places, it turns brighter, but there will still be a few showers around.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everyone. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys. I'm Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. And with you all the way through until midday with the show jam-packed full of all today's biggest stories, lots of discussion and expert guests as well.
Yes, and make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, on GBViews at gbnews.uk, and we'll get to those throughout the last hour. But first, let's give you the latest news.
Good morning, it's 11 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. The UK has warned all options will be on the table when it comes to the West's response if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. The government says it's working urgently to try to verify claims that chemical weapons were used in an attack on the besieged city of Mariupol. The Foreign Secretary described any such action as a callous escalation in the conflict. Well, the Armed Forces Minister, James Heappey, told us at GB News he's worried about a renewed assault in the east.
I'm concerned in that I think that the fighting that is going to happen this spring and this summer in the Donbass is going to be extremely violent and will be quite a big army on quite a big army. They clearly have the May the 9th victory parade in mind as a date by which they need to have achieved something.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says the chemical weapons threat is very real.
Один з рупорів окупантів заявив про те, що вони
One of the spokespeople of the invaders said they are considering using chemical weapons against the defenders of Mariupol. We take it very seriously. I want to remind world leaders that a possible use of chemical weapons had already been discussed by the Russian military. At the time, it meant the reaction to the Russian aggression should have been harsher and faster.
Meanwhile, President Vladimir Putin is warning the West that attempts to isolate the country from the rest of the world will fail. Putin said Russia will never again depend on the West after crippling sanctions have been imposed on the country for its invasion of Ukraine. The president is meeting with his Belarusian counterpart, Alexander Lukashenko, to discuss Ukraine peace talks. Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has apologised for defending the convicted sex offender Imran Ahmad Khan. The Wakefield MP, who appeared in court yesterday, was found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008. He has now been expelled from the Tory party. Well, Crispin Blunt said that Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice, but he retracted that statement this morning. More than 60 climate activists have blocked the entrance to Lloyd's of London. The demonstrators are demanding that companies stop insuring fossil fuel projects. Well, they're using superglue, chains and bike locks. They say their aim is to close the business for a day by preventing staff from entering the building. The protest is part of a week of action by Extinction Rebellion. Former pilot and member of Extinction Rebellion told GBNews, renewables are a cheaper and better form of energy.
We need to take action right now to secure a livable future. That's what the UN General Secretary is saying. It's not us. We're just here. You know, I glued myself on that Vauxhall roundabout yesterday. And of course, I don't want to get arrested. You know, I had a high-flying career, but, you know, we just need to do all that we can. And we need the people out in the streets. You know, we can't be bystanders anymore.
The number of people on payrolls rose by 35,000 between February and March. But the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics also show workers suffered the biggest fall in real pay for almost 9 years. Experts are warning wages are set to lag even further, with inflation expected to soar by the autumn. More people are said to be worried about their finances than they are about catching coronavirus. Nearly half of those surveyed by researchers at University College London say they don't feel in control of their money because of the rising cost of living, while only a third are concerned about getting the infection. A £2.6 billion government programme to improve flood defences is being expanded. The Department for Environment says 314,000 homes are now better protected following the original investment. The national flood risk is said to have been reduced by 5% over the last 6 years. The government says another £5.2 billion has been allocated for the next 6 years to come. You're up to date on GB News. I'll bring you more developments as they happen. Now, let's return to the point.
Good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV.
Guilty yesterday of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008 and was thrown out of the Tory party following that verdict. We'll be joined by our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, to talk us through the case and the political implications, as well as the fallout for a couple of other MPs as well.
Yeah. Well, a damning new report has rated 80 out of the 193 maternity services in England as inadequate or requiring improvement. This comes just weeks after the Shrewsbury scandal. We'll be joined by a midwife to talk about the failings and what can be done to improve care for mothers.
Well, locals from some of Yorkshire's seaside towns are reportedly furious as holiday home buyers have driven up house prices in God's own county. We asked one Yorkshireman whether he is part of this furious bunch, fingers crossed he is, because that will make great television, or whether he's welcoming this escape to the country surge. I hope he's furious.
Well, we have all of that coming up and much more as well across the programme over the next hour. And get in touch with your views, gbviews at gbnews.uk. We've already been reading some out the last hour and we'll plan to read many more out over the next hour. So join us for that.
Right, well, they're back at it. This morning, more than 60 people from Extinction Rebellion have blocked the entrances at Lloyd's of London's headquarters, preventing staff from entering the building. We're going to go now to our London reporter, Alice Porter, who is there yet again on the scene for us. So remind us, Alice, of what Lloyd's of London really does and why they're there, please.
Hi there, good morning. Yes, Extinction Rebellion have been here for around 4 hours, and my goodness me, they are causing all the normal chaos that they normally do. There's one man behind me who has done the traditional tactic of gluing his hands to the doors. There's also some women further down there who've actually chained themselves in, and they've got blockaded almost all entrances to Lloyd's, and they say they're frustrated at Lloyd's reliance on insuring fossil fuel companies. And we've seen quite a lot over the last week is Extinction Rebellion going after companies in the city. We saw this on Friday with Tower Bridge being blocked. So it's very much an intention to block anyone kind of coming in to these buildings and these organisations that they say are connected with investing in fossil fuel technology. But of course, it's immensely frustrating for people trying to get about their day, trying to get to work. I've seen a lot of anger from people walking past. In some ways, this feels sort of what we've seen from Extinction Rebellion for a long time, but there is something they're doing now that is quite different, that I think some people would find quite sinister. I was speaking with some of them just now, and they say they're trying to recruit 3.5% of the population for Extinction Rebellion. I was out with them on Saturday in the centre of London as well, and this is a part of a new campaign, I think. They're saying we're trying to recruit more people, we're trying to engage. You know, I mean, it depends how you read it. I mean, our Extinction Rebellion, they try to build their own sort of army or something, and 3.5% of the population, that is absolutely massive. So yes, on the one hand, this is about raising awareness, and they're trying to get their message out there, but there's actually another tactic at play. They're trying to raise awareness and recruit more members to cause much more disruption.
Indeed. Now, that actually really is quite a big revelation as well, especially considering some of the, you could say, dubious sides behind some of it, but also maybe some of the tactics and the fear that they use for people as well. What did they say the end game was there? Just to have more members, I suppose, therefore, the bigger the numbers, the more disruption they can cause, the more likely they are to get their way. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess so. I think what we have seen with Extinction Rebellion, they've now been operating for a few years, and I think they are getting more sophisticated in many ways. I think some of the spokespeople they used to put forward, I think some of their, facts and figures, I think were a little bit questionable. But now, I was speaking to one person on Saturday, and you're getting people who are much more informed, and I think they're trying to get themselves sort of taken, I think, more seriously. And I think that's the sort of a tactic that they're trying to do, and I think in trying to get the government to take them more seriously. The question is, will the government take them more seriously? I mean, when you have these kind of stunts, there's lots of pillies here, no one being arrested. I mean, I'm looking at the moment now, we've got people with signs, with sort of animal faces on. I mean, can you take an organisation seriously that are doing that sort of thing? I mean, I think it's very, very questionable. Of course, they're wanting to put an enormous amount of pressure on the government, they say, to stop investing in new fossil fuel technology. But I think it's always the methods that many people are frustrated with particularly ordinary people being caught up in the process. But I think we are seeing a slight difference in tactics. Back in 2019, we saw the big pink boat in the centre of Oxford Circus, and that disrupted a lot of working people trying to get about their day. And I think they knew they lost a lot of support with things like that. What we're seeing now, going after city workers, it's a bit more popular with the population. A lot of people have frustrations with, investment banks and bankers and insurance companies. So I think this is, as I say, I think what we're seeing here is a change in their tactics, and I think it is something that they're trying to be better coordinated, hence more people, but they're also trying to be more clever about who they're targeting in order to win round sort of popular opinion.
Fantastic stuff.
Yeah, thank you, Alice. Well, maybe they could try doing what the rest of us do and getting a job.
Oh, yeah, I suppose they could, really. But, I mean, Alice, thank you so much. Alice Portell, London reporter. I mean, it was fantastic. I love the fact that we were just going, well, look, what they're trying to do now is just make sure that they're taken seriously. OK, you've got to take them seriously. Oh, there's a man there wearing an animal head. Right, OK, fantastic, good stuff. And we're going to go actually now to our political correspondent, Tom Harwood, who famously did go to COP26 and came out with the fish on a bin line as well. You remember you went round and...
I do remember. That was one of the protests outside COP26. Remarkably, there were people protesting COP26, pro-environmental protesters protesting the Environment Conference. I think there was one person I spoke to at that conference who was anti-net zero. He said net zero didn't go far enough. That net zero implied carbon capture, and that would allow some fossil fuels to still remain. He wanted 0, literally no carbon being emitted from anything at all. Really quite remarkable people
Now that would
protesting
really
COP26.
mean extinction, wouldn't it?
No, yeah.
It would certainly mean a lot more trial and tribulation. No, it's remarkable, though, looking at how well the United Kingdom in particular has been doing, around 46% carbon reduction over the last 30 years. This sort of stuff never gets mentioned by the kind of people protesting. It's remarkable that they choose the UK as the country to protest in as well, the country that has done more than any G7 or indeed G20 country since 1990 to reduce carbon emissions.
Because we let them do it. Can you imagine doing it in Beijing? What would happen over there? I mean, we'd never see them
They won't
again.
even let them out to go get food. Because of lockdown. So I'm sure they wouldn't be letting them out on the street.
But it is remarkable, this particular protest from Extinction Rebellion, the political implications of it. The Labour Party is calling for an immediate injunction to make these protests illegal so that the government can swoop in and arrest them. And responding to that call from the Labour Party calling for an injunction, a Conservative voice, a non-executive director of the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs, Ben Goldsmith, the brother of Zach Goldsmith, well, he called Labour out. And he was disagreeing with the Labour Party in support of Extinction Rebellion. He tweeted in a now deleted tweet.
It's got the screenshots. It's got the screenshots.
The protesters are right to be doing whatever it takes to wake people up. The fossil fuel industry is grubby and dangerous. We need to unlock ourselves from our dependence ASAP. I'm with @Extinction Rebellion.
I wonder why he didn't win the
from
election.
Ben Goldsmith.
I think he's obviously massively out of touch with, well, first of all, London, as he was, of course, running to be London mayor before. But he has a history of being... That's Zach Goldsmith.
Yes, this is his brother, Ben Goldsmith.
They have a history, their family, don't they, of being environmentalists. So it's not surprising, but I think to call for Extinction Rebellion to be allowed out and to be causing this disruption, that takes it a step too far.
It does, and it's something that he has now retracted. In a message that he sent to Conservative Environment Network MPs, of course, I should say that a lot of Conservative MPs were appalled at the tweet. Some indeed called for him to step down, to resign as a non-executive director of DEFRA, Department for the Environment. But he has now said, frustration got the better of me. I know I'm not alone in feeling a rising sense of panic as the reported science grows ever grimmer. Action is far too slow, even if we in the UK are leading the way. So a sort of half retraction, an apology, and a tweet deletion there.
Well, a classic, it's the kind of thing you'd see from certain journalists as well, who cannot be named because you'd probably take me to court. Anyway, right, Tom is actually here to talk about Imran Ahmad Khan, of course, who was found guilty of a rather grim offence, that's right, isn't it? So just run us through exactly what's happened.
Well, this is a court case that has been rumbling on for some time and finally came to a conclusion yesterday, where the Conservative MP for Wakefield since 2019, Imran Ahmad Khan, was convicted of sexual assault against a 15-year-old boy at an incident that took place at a party in 2008. At this event, he's said to have ploughed this young boy with alcohol and then gone upstairs with the young boy and committed sexual assault against him. It's a trial that has been going on for some time, that Imran Ahmad Khan had been reportedly trying to not enter into the public realm, that he had been attempting to try and make this trial something that couldn't be reported. Well, now all of this is in the open and it is not looking particularly good for him.
It's not, no.
And when can we expect a potential sentence to be handed down? And will he face further consequences beyond being kicked out of the Tory party? I mean, will he be banned for life, I presume?
Yes, I think we should say at the set out of this, that when the allegations surfaced, the whip was suspended from Imran Ahmad Khan. So he hasn't been a Conservative MP sitting as a Conservative for some time. As a result of the judgment yesterday, he has been expelled from the Conservative Party, so a truly independent MP sitting in the House of Commons. He, however, is expected to appeal this conviction. So this could drag on for some time to come. And whilst it's being appealed, we won't see the full sentencing, we won't see the political ramifications in terms of potentially a by-election in his Wakefield constituency, one that was held by the Labour Party for many, many decades until being won by the Conservatives in 2019. A really interesting seat if we want to get a flavour of how the country may vote in those red wall areas at the next election.
Absolutely. Now, talk to me a bit about Conservative Conservative MP Crispin Blunt, because he's apologised for a statement defending Imran Khan. What was all that about?
That's right, a very curious statement published on Crispin Blunt, a long-serving Conservative MP, a former Select Committee chair, Crispin Blunt, published a very curious statement on his website last night, defending Imran Ahmad Khan.
I believe we can actually look at it now.
while you're running us through it.
Well, let's have a look at it there. Saying this is a statement that has now, I should say, been deleted. But last night it was posted. I am utterly appalled and distraught at the dreadful miscarriage of justice that has befallen my friend and colleague Imran Ahmad Khan, MP. He then called for the return of Imran Ahmad Khan to public service. A very curious statement, and one in which he also said that there were implications for LGBT plus Muslims around the world as a result of this case. Some very, very odd language there. Well, the Conservative Party started calling for him to withdraw that statement, which he did at 7:30 this morning. But then in a sort of half apology, Crispin Blunt said, I'm sorry for those who may have been offended. It's a very, very curious point. It has to be said that Crispin Blunt attended, I think, one day of the trial, right up at the end, didn't see the witness statements, didn't see the victim in this trial, who was really quite emotional in court. There seems to have been a very large lack of understanding here.
I mean, to call for a convicted sex offender now to be returned to public service, that seems like regardless of the details, that in and of itself is an absurd statement to associate yourself with.
It certainly is, and Crispin Blunt has dragged himself into this scandal. Of course, Crispin Blunt is not accused of doing anything himself, and yet he has plunged himself into this scandal in the most bizarre act of self-harm that anyone could possibly think of. It's a very, very odd situation. Of course, we should say that Imran Ahmad Khan is likely to appeal this ruling, but as things stand, the judgment seemed fairly overwhelming.
Tom, thank you very much. As always, Tom Harwood there, whizzing us through, well, initially, what was going on with the latest with Extinction Rebellion. If you are joining us, then they are back at it, of course. They are outside Lloyd's of London, but then, of course, getting on to the, I suppose you could say, much more serious matters in hand with Imran Khan. Thank you very much, Tom. Great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Right, views time. OK, GBNews at gbnews.uk. Yes, people saying that the Extinction Rebellion lot are actually... yes. Looking at those idiots in animal mass...
In much stronger terms, perhaps.
Yeah, there's some we can read. Looking at those idiots in animal mass outside Lord's, one is with the sign plebs on it, apparently. It was the only credible one there. It sums them up perfectly, and that's from Paul.
Yeah, well, Julie says in relation to teachers, I think a third said they'd plan to quit within 5 years because of the stresses of the job. Julie says, my son's nearing the end of year 13. He did not have any celebration or prom when he finished due to the pandemic. Normally there's a prom, but this year they're going to a corner of a school field for pizza and egg and spoon races. The head of sixth form blames the student team for not organising a prom. This is the teacher's responsibility. So just a sort of snapshot of the frustration lots of parents around the country are feeling at the fact their kids haven't had the quality of education, if any education at all for many children over the pandemic. So I think if you are a parent in that position, hearing teachers say, oh, it's too stressful for me, I can understand how that you can roll your eyes at that.
No, I agree completely with that. Well, look, thank you, everyone. Keep these comments coming in. Extinction Rebellion have certainly got you very hot under the collar, it's fair to say. Move the morons, I think, is a slogan that we need to start using, and that's from Wendy, so thank you very much, Wendy. But we are going to move on, because after the break, almost half of the maternity wards in England have been found to be unsafe. So we ask a midwife of over 40 years whether she is shocked by this report, but that's after the weather.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's been a wet start to Tuesday for many of us. That rain now moving north, warming up in the south behind the rain with some sunshine, but also a scattering of heavy showers. Low pressure keeping things unsettled at the moment. That low pressure sitting to the southwest of the UK. It is, however, drawing up some warmth from the south, along with these bands of rain. One band of rain clearing from the Northern Isles, although sticking around for much of the day for Shetland, and the next turning up into central, eastern and southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and northern England, and also a few more outbreaks of rain stretching back into central England. Otherwise, skies brightening and Temperatures rising. Could see 20 or 21 Celsius, somewhere like East Anglia this afternoon. However, for eastern and southern Scotland, northern England, feeling cold with that rain and a strong wind from the North Sea. Heavy showers breaking out as the day comes to an end across much of England and Wales, and then further showers continuing into western parts through the night, whilst the persistent rain carries on in the far northeast of Scotland, along with the brisk wind. But for most, it's a frost-free night, a good deal of cloud cover, low cloud at that, so a gloomy start to Wednesday. A lot of mist and sea fog around some of these western, southern and northeastern shores. The rain in the far northeast of Scotland tends to ease through the day. It continues, I think, for Orkney and Shetland for much of Wednesday. Otherwise, brighter skies follow, but further heavy showers, perhaps even a few thunderstorms across parts of southern England and East Wales. But it will feel warm where we get some sunshine, 20 or 21 Celsius. And for Scotland, less cold compared to today, but still temperatures are not far from average for the time of year in Scotland, whilst it's sunnier and warmer elsewhere. And then into the outlook, well, the weather turns warmer still heading into the Easter weekend. For many places, it turns brighter, but there will still be a few showers around.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. It's 11:25. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys and Mercy Muroki here on GB News. We're live on your TV, online and radio this morning.
Yes, now, a really serious story. Now, a damning new report has rated 80 out of the 193 maternity services in England as inadequate or requires improvement. The Care Quality Commission, the CCQ, only rated 2 maternity units as outstanding.
Yes, indeed. Well, this comes after a report last month that said that failings at the Shrewsbury and Telford NHS Trust were described as the most damning maternity scandal in the history of the NHS. Well, is the NHS failing mothers? Joining us to discuss this is Caroline Flint, a midwife for over 40 years. Caroline, look, thank you so much for joining us. This is horrendous. I mean, I think, we all thought we were first world country or whatever. We wouldn't have thought that childbirth would appear to be such a risk.
Well, we have known this for a long time. Morecambe Bay 2 years ago. There's another report coming up. It's tragic, but do be aware that hospitals are factories. And we have known, you see, the problem is we never tell women the truth. Never tell women the truth, never listen to women, and that's what's so awful. And we have known for the last 10 years that the safest place for women to book for a birth is at home. Women who book for a home birth are phenomenally safer than if they go to hospital. Hospital is fine when you need it. Hospital is brilliant if you have a very long labour or it's really painful or you need, a lot of help. But for a normal just progressing birth, there was a study in the Lancet 2 years ago which was astonishing, and nobody seems to have heard of it. When women were booked for a home birth, regardless of where they gave birth, 40% less needed a caesarean section, 50% less had a forceps delivery, 55% less had an episiotomy, 40% less had a third or fourth degree tear, and 75% less had an infection. Well, that's astonishing. I mean, if you can bypass having stitches and scars and all the rest of it, for goodness sake, stay at home. But if you can't stay, but the thing about a home birth is you can always transfer to hospital.
I have to say, from my own experience, from when I had my first child, I only do have one child, I had a perfectly good experience. So I know it's not reflective of every woman's experience, but of course there are those general problems that these studies are indicating. But what I would ask is, the Shrewsbury Trust, for example, they were accused of this insistence on natural birth, for example, and not giving women the leeway that they needed and not letting women, do what they wanted when they could feel their own body. Isn't an insistence on any one-size-fits-all a problem? We can't say a home birth will suit everybody, can we? We just have to let women decide what's best for them, because often women do know their own body better than everybody else.
Well, Mercy, you're quite right. The UK is actually quite a safe place to give birth. Most women are absolutely safe. But if you start off at home, you have changed the dynamics. You've got the woman in charge, and if she's only going to have a 2-hour labour or a 3-hour labour, she might just as well stay at home and have a nice labour there. If she's going to have a ghastly long labour and it's very painful, she needs to move to hospital to have an epidural. And better to move to hospital when she's actually in established labour than to go off to hospital right at the beginning of her labour and be told you're not really in labour, go home. It's much better to have a captive midwife in your house who's letting you know what's going on.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I think obviously, in the vast majority of cases, I suppose it is safe, clearly. It is safe to give birth in hospital. But just tell us a little bit about some of the things for our viewers and our listeners, of course, on radio as well, and anyone watching online, that some of the things that actually went on with these women. Because there was a pretty shocking story that I heard at Shrewsbury and Telford, where a lady had been scheduled in for a caesarean section. She had previously had a very difficult birth, I believe, which was why they'd booked her in for it. And they said to her, sorry, we've met our quota for the day. And, I mean, the story that unfolded after that, actually, I'm not even sure whether or not I can say it at this time in the morning on national television, but really shocking stuff was going on, wasn't it?
Well, Patrick, horrible stuff. Yes, horrible. But you see, this whole thing about natural birth, I think, is a smokescreen. I have read 3/4 of the Ockenden report now, and I haven't met the word natural birth once. So this is a thing from the media. Women don't have natural births in 2022. They have very, very interfered with births. They have medically induced births, medically accelerated births, medically, they just don't have an opportunity to have a natural birth. So nobody knows whether a natural birth would have been better or not, because it's not on the menu anymore.
Well, look, thank you very, very much, and it's great to have you on the show. Caroline Flint there, of course, giving her views anyway, and you were a midwife for 40 years, so some experience there behind that, that's for sure. Thank you very much for joining us. Really interesting topic, of course. It looks like it's a bit bleak out there.
Yeah.
You were talking about, I think we've not got too long, but about the over-medication in childbirth.
Over-medicalisation, I called it, of childbirth. I think I had a natural birth, I had not a home birth, a water birth, which is as natural as you can get. You're not allowed epidural. You're just kind of left alone to give birth to your child in a hot tub, I call it.
Right.
But the point is, I think a lot of women are pressured and they feel like they can't do it, and they end up being in hospital. It's quite a stressful environment. Doctors and midwives end up over-medicalising it or stressing them even more. So I do take her point that home births have been shown to be better, but of course we advocate women to listen to their own doctors and midwives who would know their own circumstances.
Indeed. Right, look, keep these views coming in. We'll go to them very shortly. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Thank you very much, everyone who has been getting in touch. But after the break, are too many Southerners escaping to Yorkshire? We asked one Scarborough resident whether or not he is one of the locals who's furious at the amount of tourists snapping up properties. I really hope he is furious, because that would make great TV. But first, it's the news.
A very good morning. It's 11:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date. The UK has warned all options will be on the table when it comes to the West's response if Russia uses chemical weapons in Ukraine. The government says it's working urgently to verify claims that chemical weapons were used in an attack on the besieged city of Mariupol. It's after the Foreign Secretary described any such action as a callous escalation in the conflict. The Conservative MP Crispin Blunt has apologised for defending the convicted sex offender Imran Ahmad Khan. The Wakefield MP, who appeared in court yesterday, was found guilty of sexually assaulting a 15-year-old boy in 2008. He's now been expelled from the Tory party. Crispin Blunt said Khan was the victim of a dreadful miscarriage of justice, but he retracted that statement this morning. More than 60 Extinction Rebellion activists have blocked the entrance of Lloyd's of London. The demonstrators are demanding the company stop insuring fossil fuel projects. Well, using superglue, chains and bike locks, they say their aim is to close business for a day by preventing staff from entering the building. The number of people on payrolls rose by 35,000 between February and March, but the latest figures from the Office for National Statistics also show workers suffered the biggest fall in real pay for almost 9 years. Experts are warning wages will lag even further, with inflation expected to soar by autumn. You're up to date. We're on your TV, online and radio. Don't go anywhere. Patrick and Mercy will be back shortly.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christys.
And I'm Mercy Muroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, morning everyone. It's about to go 11:37. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News. Live as ever on your TV, radio and online this morning.
Yes, now thousands of barristers across England and Wales are undertaking strike action in protest over pay and, quote, crisis in the criminal justice system. The Criminal Bar Association said that action was needed to, quote, halt the alarming exodus of criminal barristers from the publicly funded work.
Well, a particular area of their concern is provisions for legal aid, a system that supports those who cannot afford legal representation. So with the court backlogs possibly lasting years because of COVID disruption, is now really the time for barristers to go on strike?
That's why, to help answer this question is Diana Constantinide, criminal barrister at 33 Bedford Chambers. Good morning, Diana. This, in a way, is an almost ethical question for me, because it doesn't seem right that people who have been accused of something, and of course people are innocent until proven guilty, should have to suffer because barristers want different pay and conditions.
You're absolutely right. And may I firstly say a very good morning to all of you. You're absolutely right.
Well, we'll try and...
The criminal barrier in our hearts that we need to make sure that each and every one that comes to the court, that they are represented. But it's been many years that legal aid has been a trouble for criminal barristers, and I can speak especially for junior criminal barristers. And that is because when you are a junior barrister, you rely heavily on your income, starting your life, starting your career. And legal aid, it doesn't really allow for a junior criminal barrister to do that. And actually, the Criminal Bar Association, they've issued a guidance, and they said that about £12,000, that's how much they receive per year, per annum, the junior criminal barristers. And that's something that needs to be addressed urgently, though.
And what's the situation like then? Are people leaving in their droves? Will this have a massive, massive impact on our justice system? Is it just going to end up with people waiting years and years and years to get to court?
You're right. There is a backlog, actually, because of that. About 60,000 cases at the Crown Court now. So that's something that needs to be addressed. That's something the government needs to look into it. And they need to address this delicate balance between making sure that there is a representation for defendants, but also that the criminal barristers, that we work more than 60 hours per week, that we are allowed, like any human being, to have an income and to be able to have a quality life, which in this situation as it is now is not possible. And if I may say, as a junior criminal barrister myself, there was once for a sentence, I was given £50, £25 was for the ticket, and then I had to sandwich. So you make the maths for you to understand, and the preparation, the hours to prepare, and the paperwork that you've got to read. So realistically, where does the balance wait? What can we do about it? And that's what the government needs to address.
Absolutely. Does this filter down into the police as well, or the CPS? So are they taking longer to investigate people? You know, are they taking longer to charge people as well? Or is that process still working? It's just a question of getting them to court?
I think it's about the legal aid itself. I think that's what needs to be addressed. Now, whether it's a flow of work or whether it's the cases, that's a different matter. But I think it's about the legal aid, the fees and the preparation for the work, if that is effective, if that is proportionate. And as it is now, it is not. And it is, as the Criminal Bar Association issued a statement, they said this is completely unacceptable. And if I may say, I agree with that. And there are many silk barristers out there, and I know for a fact that they've been supporting the junior bar, and they've been next to us in this strike. And I think that's a very important message.
Look, thank you so much, Diana, and good luck to you, obviously. I hope that your situation resolves itself, and thank you for expressing it so eloquently. I certainly wouldn't mind you representing me in court, that's for sure. There's criminal barrister there at 33 Bedford Chambers. Right, OK, well, we're just going to move on from that. So with the cost of living crisis continuing to bite, many are returning to old practices, like growing their own vegetables. Now, with this, we see allotments making a comeback. I'd like an allotment. Would you not? You're not particularly green-fingered?
I am slightly, but I quite like, going to the shop and just buying the
but it's
I need.
It's a sense of purpose that you get with growing your own marrow that you don't get
but I have a child for that, and that's what children are for, giving your meaningless life a sense of purpose.
Oh, got you. I thought you meant dishing them out into the gardens to do manual labour, but there we go. Right, OK. Well, lots of people are now growing their own fresh fruit, veg, whatever you name it, they're growing it. Now, Dougie Beattie went along to find out what it takes to set an allotment up, and he also gave a helping hand as well, apparently.
Britain's rebuilding programme from the 40s to the 60s saw high-rise living become the norm. Food shortages and high prices meant allotments supplied by the councils would help feed the nation. Places such as this went from necessity in the 40s to hobby in the 90s. The arrival of highly processed food meant everyday costs went down. The need for make, do and mend and grow your own was no longer necessary. Councils sold much of these areas off for development, but now they're having a revival. John Reid says it's about much more than food.
The main aim is fun and a bit of fellowship with my son when he has time. He's a busy man. So we've planted, last year we had a crop of strawberries, raspberries, rhubarb, peas, broad beans, potatoes.
Many hands make light work, and Emma Wallace says getting others involved is the way forward.
Well, I bought a shed in the January sales, and see, I really back myself. This is the problem. I think I'll be able to put up that shed no problem on my own. And then, of course, it arrived in February and it was very windy. It sat here for a month and a half, and I just struggled to get it up myself. So I've called in a few favours from a few friends, and my lovely boyfriend is here today to help put up the shed. So definitely a slow process, but my uncle always said that gardening was believing in tomorrow, and I always thought that was a really nice sentiment. Sort of, you're slowly planning the future, but also enjoying the moment.
Even in this tranquil setting, the protocol is having an effect, and Aaron Gibson is frustrated at the availability of seed.
I used to get my wee plants, some of the wee plants from England, and which we can't get now, and seeds is very hard to get as well. Like, I've waited 3 weeks there on pea seeds coming back in again to the shops. They're just not getting them in.
Sisters Margaret and Sharon are on their second year and say it was hard at the start, but it's an excellent weekend activity.
We struggled big time, but we really enjoyed it, honestly. From the top of the allotment right down, it was just like a field. Oh, we love it every Saturday. It keeps us away from shops and all sorts.
With food prices continuing to rise, allotments may well be the answer to seeing those green shoots of recovery. Growing your own food brings its own rewards, but it takes time, patience and a little bit of help. Dougie Beattie, GB News, County Down.
Fantastic stuff, that, Dougie. Well done, yes. Now, like we were saying before, I'd quite like an allotment, to be honest with you, but then I don't know, they're quite hard to come by in London,
Yeah, my mum had one, and I did visit once, and it's fulfilment. It does bring fulfilment, but we were just saying, I like DIY, so DIY is my version of gardening. I like renovating.
I'm not allowed to do DIY because
You'd be a harm to yourself and
also,
others.
I don't get IKEA, right? I think it's about time someone called IKEA out on national television, right? So you go there, you see what you like, you buy it, and then you have to put it up yourself.
Yes.
But what's the point of that? It's not that much cheaper.
I think it is, actually. And also, it's quite fun assembling
No,
furniture.
but it's not just... OK, you're nuts. Right, well, we're going to move on. No, it's not fun at all. You injure yourself. You
you
smash
injure
a finger.
yourself.
You spend ages shouting at the instructions saying that they've missed a part. You know they haven't missed a part. And, yeah, I've been told apparently I need to get a man in.
Maybe you need a man in your life.
I probably do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, or a woman. Yeah, actually, you've mugged yourself off there. Anyway, right, OK. Right, we're moving on. Yorkshire's proud residents have always boasted that their landscapes, fishing villages and beaches are the best in the UK. God's own county. That's the expression.
Yes, well, it seems the rest of us agree, because as 3 North Yorkshire towns have found themselves in the top 20 most sought-after second home destinations for those looking to escape to the country. But how do the residents of Whitby, Filey, who knows, Scarborough, feel about the rush of southerners flocking to their towns, as some locals report they're being priced out by the surge in demand for those lovely second country homes?
Yes, fantastic stuff. Well, I believe now we can welcome our guest, who's a long-time resident of sunny Scarborough and an expert in all things Whitby, having written several books in the town. Author Mark Richards joins us now. Are you absolutely fuming about this? Southerners coming up there, I should say, ruining your area?
No, I'm too old in life to be absolutely fuming, but I get absolutely fuming about a few things. But you know, this is just something. It's a serious problem, and you have a look at the price of houses in Whitby. Scarborough's the same. Filey, further down the coast at Bridlington, you go right up to Northumberland. It's absolutely beautiful, and you've got some pictures there. It's absolutely beautiful, and who wouldn't want to live here? But I think the beach huts, I used to walk my dog there, and clearly something needs to be done about it. But I think I'm getting a bit long in the tooth to be absolutely fuming. I know it makes good TV, but I try and look at it a bit more logically.
Right, and it was sickening. It was so annoying because you get people there, they buy a nice home, and they never use the local post office. They don't send their kids to their local schools. All of a sudden, the soul's ripped out of the area. There's no need to put a rural bus service on anymore. I mean, goodness me, especially in God's own county,
I think the problem is that if houses are being bought as holiday homes, it becomes a sort of a vicious circle, because somewhere is bought as a holiday home, it's not lived in through the winter, and therefore the town, if you take Whitby as the example, Whitby becomes more seasonal. There's not a huge amount of good, well-paid jobs there. You look at the price of houses. I had a quick look on Rightmove this morning. Three-bed terrace property, 190,000. Even if you put in £20,000 down for a first-time buyer, 3 or 4 times joint income, that's going to be very difficult for them to afford, especially with the price of gas and electricity going up as well. So it becomes very, very difficult. You get a town full of barristers. One good thing about Whitby, going back to your last segment, is beautiful allotments just in the shadow of Whitby Abbey. So I can absolutely understand why people want to live there.
There is also where Dracula arrived ashore, isn't it?
It is indeed where Dracula came ashore. Yeah, Dracula in the shape of a black dog leapt ashore, went up to Bram Stoker went up to St Mary's Churchyard and got the idea for Dracula. Yeah, that's where he leapt ashore. That's pretty much the view that Bram Stoker would have had as well from that churchyard. So, yeah, Whitby's got a huge amount going for it. It's got fish and chips. It's got the traditional fishing industry, Dracula, the Moors, Heartbeat, Captain Cook. Whitby's the oldest whaling port in the UK. I think it used to be the UK's biggest whaling port. So there's a lot of history there as well.
And now as well, to add to all that, now it's got fewer Yorkshiremen as well. I mean, what's not to know? I'm only joking, of course. I'm from the north myself. But, no, I mean, it does seem like a great place to go. The Airbnb industry it must have knocked it out as well. It's not just the second homeowners, isn't it?
The B&B industry does really well, and you can do B&B all year round. The problem is that so many of the houses are not just B&B, it's Airbnb. And Airbnb is a problem in many towns, not just seaside towns, as you know. My youngest son was at university in Edinburgh, and Airbnb was changing the face of a lot of the tenement buildings in Edinburgh. So there's plenty of tourism there, and one of the reasons I set the books in Whitby was that so many people have been there on holiday. But for the locals trying to buy a house, it can be very, very, very difficult.
Yeah, thank you very, very much. No, it's been great to have you on the show and to give such a ringing endorsement for Whitby, Scarborough, all those kind of places around there. It is a beautiful part of the world, to be fair, and there is a lot to do, and it's no surprise to me that people want to basically pinch all your homes. But look, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show. We'll speak again soon, no doubt.
I enjoyed that, especially you trying to get him to be furious. You've been hoping for that, but he doesn't. He's too old to get furious at many things nowadays.
It was impossible to wind up that bloke, wasn't he? No, I think it's because I've spent a lot of time in Yorkshire over the years. You used to play a lot of cricket there and stuff, and it's all you love an angry Yorkshireman. You know, like a Geoffrey Boycott type figure, where nothing you do is right. You know, nothing you do is right. I was really hoping we were going to get that guy, but actually he was just very level-headed, and that has to be fine because it's all about.
Well, it makes the contrast to.
Yes, it does. Right.
Somebody on who's level-headed.
Okay. I didn't think you were going to go down that route. Anyway, let's take you through some of the headlines of the day that you might have missed.
Yes, actress and disability rights activist Liz Carr is calling for theatres to hold separate performances for audience members who want to wear face masks or socially distance.
Well, she said that she was concerned theatres were becoming even more inaccessible to those with underlying health conditions and at risk of dying from COVID as the UK returns to pre-pandemic norms. So she's speaking at the Olivier Awards. She confessed the awards ceremony was a frightening night for her, as it was the first time she herself had been to a theatre in over 2 years. I can see the point there.
I can see the point. I mean, at first, when I saw the headlines for this story, I was like, oh, who's calling for, mask-only theatres or whatever, mask-only performances? But actually, there is a more serious point, isn't there, is that there are still lots of people who are very clinically vulnerable and are still at risk of catching and getting severe disease from COVID. So it makes sense in this case, I think.
Absolutely. Mercedes Formula One star Sir Lewis Hamilton said the Grand Prix race directors will have to chop his ears off if they want him to remove his jewellery. So despite a jewellery ban being in place for the sport since 2004, new race director Niels Wootton called for greater enforcement of the ban this weekend at the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. But Hamilton, who competes on Sunday with piercings in both ears and a nose stud because he's an absolute rebel, said that if anyone wants to remove it, they would have to cut his ear off because apparently they are actually welded in, which is something I didn't realise that you could actually do.
Yeah, I mean, it does very much scream first world problems, isn't it? Because I'm sure, for instance, those earrings probably cost more than the average person earns, right? And it's just like, oh no, I refuse to remove my diamond earrings at this Grand Prix.
Yeah,
but you have to rip them from my ears.
You used to see like old school racing drivers, old school Formula One, like dashing chaps, right? I mean, players, they did their own thing. They were razzing it round there. It was all very dangerous, seat of the pants stuff. Real men. Anyway, now we have Lewis Hamilton.
Real men don't wear nose rings. That's my take of the day.
Yes. Pop star Britney Spears is pregnant with her third child. And it's her first with her partner, Sam Asghari. So, yes, there we go. Baby one more time was a rather predictable strap there. But the 40-year-old announced her pregnancy on Instagram yesterday. Britney previously claimed she was forced onto birth control during her 13-year-long conservatorship, which some would say was toxic.
Yes, well, her conservatorship was abolished in November, and of course the singer is now pregnant at the age of 40.
Yes, good for her.
Well, yeah, good for her, because she did say that conservatorship was stopping her from starting a family, which is what she said she really wanted. So.
Yes, no, fantastic stuff. Yeah. Well, congratulations, Britney, I suppose. Right, well, thank you, everyone who's been getting in touch. GBViews, gbnews.uk. Mercy's going to whiz you through a couple of those views just before we go.
Yes, but before that, our audience, tomorrow we need your help. We're asking for what you want us to talk about. We're handing the show over to you. Want you to tell us what to talk about, who to talk about, what you think the most important stories are, and just the subjects really that you want covering, that you're missing perhaps from other channels.
Yes.
You can email us with those stories at tothepoint@gbnews.uk. So we'll be sifting through those and making sure tomorrow's show is very much led by what you want to see.
No, that's exactly. Tomorrow's show is your show, OK? So these topics have been coming in thick and fast. There's some absolute corkers in there so far. And you know what? Ones that don't have to be time sensitive. It doesn't have to be something that's been in the news right now. Just something that's close to your heart. And yeah, like I said, tomorrow's show is really shaping up. So yeah, make sure you get in touch tothepoint@gbnews.uk. Keep these coming in, and tomorrow is all about you. There we go, right?
Yes, well, I thought that was it. We will see you tomorrow, and we promise we'll get to more of those views tomorrow when we meet again. Have a good day.
Hi there, I'm Aidan McGivern. It's been a wet start to Tuesday for many of us. That rain now moving north, warming up in the south behind the rain with some sunshine, but also a scattering of heavy showers. Low pressure keeping things unsettled at the moment. That low pressure sitting to the southwest of the UK. It is, however, drawing up some warmth from the south, along with these bands of rain. One band of rain clearing from the Northern Isles, although sticking around for much of the day for Shetland, and the next turning up into central, eastern and southern Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland and northern England, and also a few more outbreaks of rain stretching back into central England. Otherwise, skies brightening and temperatures rising. Could see 20 or 21 Celsius, somewhere like East Anglia this afternoon. However, for eastern and southern Scotland, northern England,